They say you can't live on bread alone. But my friend Rosie begged to differ. Rosie loved bread. Well, she liked other bread-like products too. Things like French toast or pancakes or goldfish crackers and all forms of pasta. One year for her birthday, a good friend of hers made a birthday card out of dried curly pasta stuck on construction paper, spelling out "Happy Birthday, Rose." This was to accompany the gift itself, which was an elegantly wrapped loaf of Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread was Rosie's absolute favorite. If she had her way, she'd have had Wonder Bread for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Maybe some of you have heard me talk about Rosie before. She was my very dear friend from L'Arche, someone who has had a profound impact on my life. Rosie was a force to be reckoned with, a diminutive woman standing about 4 feet tall with a very wiry frame and wavy blonde hair. She was in her early 40s when I came to know her. She had lived the first 20 years of her life in an institution for children with disabilities. We know very little about those hidden years, but we can imagine that they were a time of deep hardship and desolation. When Rose was welcomed to live at L'Arche at the age of 22, she was so small that she didn't even need a wheelchair. She just sat in an umbrella stroller, the kind that folds up. She didn't walk or talk. She didn't like to be touched. She had little interest in food, and she gravitated away from people to any corner of any room she was in. But little by little, she began to emerge from her shell. She started to spend more time with other people. She discovered foods that she liked to eat. She discovered water and learned how to swim. She grew stronger and taller. And at the age of 24, she learned to walk for the first time. During the second half of her life, Rosie fed the rest of us with her embrace of life, with her sense of humor and her iron will. And through the simple daily routines of our life together, we were nourished by her example, learning to stand more confidently, feel more honestly, and try more earnestly. There are so many incredible stories that I could tell you about Rose, about how she learned to walk, or ride a bike, or ride a horse, about the time she traveled to Ukraine to visit a friend of hers. So many remarkable tales, signs of wonder and grace. The first half of the Gospel of John is sometimes called the Book of Signs. In it, there are 7 miraculous stories told about Jesus. There's the one about changing water into wine at a wedding, the one about raising Lazarus from the dead, the time he healed a royal official's son when he tells him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." Over the past couple of Sundays, we've been reading through chapter 6 of John's Gospel, in which Jesus takes 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and multiplies them so that a crowd of 5,000 is somehow wonderfully fed. The rest of chapter 6 is this back and forth between Jesus and the people as they struggle to understand and receive this sign. We heard in verse 14 that when the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come to the world." Then Jesus goes away from them because he knows they'll want to make him king. But they follow, and when they catch up with him, Jesus challenges them and says, "You're looking for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." A sign is something that points to a reality beyond itself. Jesus says that he shares signs and wonders not to draw attention to himself, but so that we can experience something firsthand, a glimpse of the transformative power of God's love. Now, everyone has seen Jesus perform this miracle of the bread, and they all know that it points to his power. But not everyone has acknowledged where Jesus himself is pointing. This is what he's trying to do when we hear him say, "I am the living bread come down from heaven." He's trying to refocus the conversation on his relationship with his Father, the one who sent him. Jesus says he is living bread. What could that possibly look like? Living bread. There are so many stories about Rosie, but I want to share just one now. Toward what would be the last months of her life, Rosie became very sick. She had emergency surgery and spent several weeks in the ICU, relying on all sorts of machines to help her live. When, by the grace of God, she emerged from that ICU, she was so thin. Rosie, who was tiny to start with, had lost weight that she couldn't afford to lose. And it was clear that if she was going to get better, she needed to start eating again. Now, starting to eat again after major surgery isn't simple. It can be very slow and frustrating work to regain the strength to swallow your food. You're not allowed to eat whatever you want. You have to follow a very strict protocol. Rosie wasn't much for protocols in general, and she really hated mushy food. But somehow, bit by bit, she made progress. At first, she took small sips of thick liquids, then little bites of applesauce. Then she moved on to solid food, a bit of pasta chopped up. And finally, after days and days of effort, a morsel of Wonder Bread. I've never been so excited to see someone eat a piece of bread. Watching Rosie eat a piece of bread was like watching her come back to life. When she came home from the hospital, the race was on to help her regain her strength. And unfortunately for Rosie, Wonder Bread can't actually meet all of the dietary needs of the human body. So we all put our heads together to take all of the nutritious things that she needed and turn them into a form that she would like to eat. That is, into the form of bread. For example, she wouldn't eat a bowl of porridge, but she would eat muffins with oat bran and peanut butter baked in. You get the idea. So we tried recipes, we tinkered with them, and we shared them with her other friends who wanted to help. You wouldn't believe how many things can go into a loaf of bread. Vegetables, fruit, nuts, protein powder, fat powder, you name it. Everything got turned into bread of some sort. And all that wondrous bread kept her going. She, in turn, kept us going. We were thrilled just to be in her presence. Maybe you'll know what I mean if you've ever been close to someone who's come close to dying but comes back to us instead. There was a luminous quality to her. People were drawn to her like moths to a flame. I remember the way people dropped to their knees just to look her in the eye, and the way she reflected some of her light back to them. We were awestruck. Rosie was living bread for us. It's quite simple, this idea that each and every person is sent to us by God to be living bread. But how hard it is to live this out and to practice it in our day-to-day reality. To imagine that the people around us, those whom we love and enjoy, and those whom we'd rather avoid, and all those in between, all of these people are given to us as bread for our journey. Perhaps even harder to imagine is the idea that we ourselves are called to be living bread for others through simple everyday gestures of kindness, humility, and generosity. So often we resist the reality that God is present in the ordinariness of our lives. In times of need, we call upon a God of strength and might, a God who moves mountains and performs great miracles, not a God in the kitchen sneaking protein powder into muffins when we're not looking, and certainly not a God who's as hungry as we are. Meister Eckhart writes, "There is no such thing as my bread. All bread is ours and is given to me, to others through me, and to me through others. For not only bread, but all things necessary for sustenance in this life are given on loan to us, with others, and because of others, and for others, and to others, through us." Living bread is about knowing that all things necessary for sustenance in this life are given on loan to us. What a humbling and wondrous thing that is. Living bread is about being moved and shaped by gratitude for all that is given to us by God through others. Living bread is about joining with others and for others in God's never-ending efforts to feed and to heal in our hurting and hungry world. May God bless us today and every day with both wonder and bread. Amen.